Hello, and welcome to Getting to Know Nuendo. I'm Lee Riley, and in this episode, we'll explore ways to export and move media between projects in Nuendo. So let's start moving along. Okay, let's take a look. Let's move me out of the way, right? You don't really need to see me. So, So we've all been in this situation where we may have to move media between projects, between sessions. Maybe you have some other people who are working on the same project as you, but they have to actually bring in elements from one project to another. Or you may have repeated elements throughout the project, like a certain amount of sound effects that you could use everywhere else in that project. So this is no more so in gaming projects. I've worked on those where I've used lots of different elements multiple times because of different characters. So here we have a typical, just something that I've got a capture of, a little capture of the small part of a game. So let's kind of take a look at this. Might help if I click on Nuendo first. There we go. Awesome. So let's take a listen to what we've actually got. Cool. So that's a jump gate in space, right? So that jump gate, starts up and starts to speed up, heavy mechanical thing. Then all of a sudden it gets to a certain speed after the wormhole envelops, and boom, a spaceship flies through the middle of it. But I'm not 100% happy with it, right? So I've got these folders here, right? So of course we're going to take a look at these as we move along. But all of these are in categories, and I'm using those as my sound design. But the loop itself, it starts off. I just want some kind of like a power-up kind of sound, right? So this power-up that I'm needing. So enter clip packages. What we're going to talk about first. You can bring, a cluster of sounds, a container file from other sessions. Of course, we can import. We already know about importing tracks, but let's try something a bit different now. We're going to import clip packages, and I want to show you what they actually do. So to do that, I'm going to have a look at another session, which I miraculously made earlier, right? So here we have the missing link. Here we have the missing sounds that what I really want. So in this session, I'm going to make this active. Let's take a look. Now that this is active, remember in Nuendo, you can actually have multiple projects running, or open, should we say, but only one active at any given time, because you have to have a focus of where your cursor is and everything else, right? So it makes sense, but you can have multiple projects open, which is fantastic in my view, right? So I've got the missing link here. I've got this startup. Okay. So that just gets me going, and it layers in with those other sounds. And right at the end, we have, a power down sound. Okay. So I want to grab those, but of course I know I can import the tracks. But what I want to do is I can select all this stuff, right? And I select it and export those clips as clip packages. Now, I'll show you in the other session what it actually means. But this will allow us, on this particular session, I have some automation there, right? I have some automation on the track itself. So if you look here, right, we actually have The inspector's not showing it for some odd reason. Why is that? There we go. So we have the fader for that particular track, and you will notice that that's set in the center, and it's starting to spread out, right? But that's clip-based, right? This sits on the track, but that information is going to port over with our clips. Okay, with that in mind, let me go back. And there's a couple of ways. I exported it already, right? As if by magic. I'm going to make this active again. Of course, that makes sense. I'm going to have a little sip of water here. And I need to add these. The only prerequisite you actually need is the fact that you have those tracks ready for those clips to sit on. So I've got 2 tracks ready and waiting for those clips to come in. Now, wherever my cursor is, that's where it's going to snap to. I can do this 2 ways. I can import them by searching through the media bay, right? I could do that. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to move this video out of the way, and I can use the media bay here to search for that I exported out of the other session. I didn't export it right now, but we'll get there. So that's jump gate. But what I have to do first is I'm going to mark the clip packages. Okay. So now the media bay is searching for clip packages, and as if by magic, I don't even have to, it's so in tune with my brain that it's already found it. So what I could do here is just click on it. And then, of course, the media bay is allowing us to click anywhere in there and listen to the entire clip package, right? Which was 3 clips, but it's almost acting like it's one file. So it is a container file that creates that contains all that stuff, right? And it's a combination of all those 3 clips in there plus their handles. Cool. But it's only showing me what the actual clip was that I kind of exported, that timeline, you know? So there is one way of doing it. There's the preview, actually, for the levels. And depending if it's a music one, it's going to snap and align beats in the project, but we'll get there in another episode. But this is purely for bringing in clip packages for the minute. Or I can physically file, import clip packages. Cool. So there's the clip package. It just happens to be saved in this particular folder. I can bring that in. And what it's going to ask me, it's going to ask me, this clip package contains automation. Do you want to bring that in? And I'm like, well, okay, cool. That's what I want, right? So I'm going to say, okay, because remember the jump gate opened up at the beginning. So I'm going to say, okay, cool. It's brought the tracks in, but what I can do here is kind of command drag that up there. And I'm going to put it onto the tracks that I've got there. Cool. Now I'm a little concerned here because have I just moved? Aha. Okay, great. Did I actually have... No. Cool. So that just shows you... That's actually the first time I've seen that happen. Bringing in the track as well. Cool. Anyways, but that just goes to show you that it brought it on a track, but yet the clip keeps that automation in the clip. That's actually a happy accident for me to show you. I couldn't have organized that any better if I tried. So right here, we've got something, an unusual thing up there. Anyway, we've got something here, but I need to hit the read automation. That's the only thing I need to do. I can get rid of those 2 tracks now, which I've got as select and then shift delete. There's no information on that, so that's cool. So if we look at this fader right here, we already see that right now it's splitting those lanes, and that automation has been brought in. Okay, so now I'm satisfied. Now I've got the clips that I need to send this off to my client, or if I just need to mix it. So those are actually ready to rock and roll. Excellent. So that's import, and those are clip packages. Give me a second for my amazing lemon tea. Thank you for joining us today. This is fantastic. Episode 10. I'm all jazzed about this. So, right. We talked about import. So we can actually export. So say, for example, I wanted to grab those guys right there. That is a cluster of, it's a container file that holds all those audio events, right? So what I want to do is file, export, and then clip package. Of course, we can talk about selected tracks and all these other things, but this isn't track-based, but I'm exporting these as a clip. So, of course, I can make new folder and determine where it's going to go, but just let's have a look at this first with that little gear, which allows us to put, the author. I can put the author in there. It actually shows me what's involved, the content that's involved in every single clip. And there's something else as the project name, which we'll see that in a minute, whereas it doesn't necessarily matter what the session's named when we're exporting anything, but that's what it's actually named. This is the project that it's coming from. That's the source project. Now the rating, let's say I can click on this and I can drag this to say, well, okay, I think this is the best clip package ever. Of course, I can just go ahead and use that to find my favorite ones, right, in the media bay later on. I can search by that attribute. Cool. And then finally, I'm just going to go ahead and name it. So I can just name that as my activation and export that. But I could use a new folder. I can make a new folder if I wanted to. And it all depends where I want it to be. Do I want it to be in a different part of my hard drive, or do I really want to save it in this session, right? Nothing really new about that, but that's basically what that is. I've done this before. So I can just show you this, something similar in the pool, right? So the pool is basically the browser, but it is where all of our media is kept for this particular project, okay? And you'll see that we have some clip packages in there, and those are ready to export or drag directly into the session. Okay, awesome. So I think we've really talked about export and import as far as clip packages are. But this, I think, is the meat and potatoes of the entire thing. Because most of you out there would probably say, well, okay, Lee, this is great. This is fantastic. This is the small clips, and I can use those and share them between sessions and projects. Great, but what happens if I want to bounce to disk, right? Or bounce everything down as a stereo file or a multi-channel file or even stems, right? So this is kind of interesting. I might be passing it along to somebody else who's going to mix all of these down as separate stems. Now, for those of you in audio post-production, this will happen all the time. You have a DME, right? You have your dialogue stem, your music and effects, or dialogue, music, and effects stems. Okay, so this is how you would do this multiply and simultaneously at the same time. But we need to do some routing for that. So let's do the simple thing and export just a stereo file first. So this is file export audio mixdown. Right? So audio mixdown, I have that as my Control E, and it brings up this window. I've actually talked about this window before, but now it's really time to go into it because this is basically it's more or less an entire episode with clip packages included. So first off, top left-hand corner, right? That is my single channel selection. So what that means is I can have various outlets, track by track, as in audio channels. I can export effects channels. I can export group channels, right? But what I'm doing is I'm summing this down into a stereo output, right? My output was already determined, remember, in studio, right? So my audio connections, that's my physical output of my interface. So I can set up a few more different things to route things otherwise, mono outputs, etc., but I want this to be my stereo output. Cool. First off, what I could do right now is talk about more or less the entire thing. I'll export something, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the stems. Now notice this project, like I said just a few minutes ago, that the project itself is called Episode 10 Jumpgate, but I've called it Jumpgate Design because I might have multiple sessions, multiple projects all under that main umbrella project. But the umbrella the project could be called Jumpgate Design, right? So therefore that is the main group of all these together. I can set that. Oops, sorry, I pressed on the wrong one. I can set up the project name actually by just double-clicking it as well. Single-clicking it as well. Set up my project name, auto-update the name when that changes. Okay. Before I look at the naming schemes, I just want to quickly look at path here. So the path itself, well, okay, if I just exported it right now, okay, without looking at anything, I know it's going to go somewhere. Something is going to go somewhere, but where is that going to go? It is going to go where I choose, of course. I can choose a completely separate folder. I can use the project's audio folder, okay, or I could use the project's Mixdown folder. That's just been in the last couple of releases, I think, of Nuendo, whereas it actually makes a Mixdown folder for you. And then here are my recent paths that I've used before. But I found it. I'm good. That's where I want it to be. It is telling me what it's going to be named, right? Currently. Right. So let's talk about naming schemes. This is kind of a big one, right? Because for any of you that do and export a lot of files, and you have to export them a certain name and not get them lost and you want them all, if they're in the same project, it keeps everything organized, right? So this stereo file that we're going to bounce currently is named after the group, right? Maybe if I double click this right now, project name, that's going to line up right after it. Or I can just simply drag it right next to it, or I can drag it before it if I want. So then it'd be project name and whatever it is, right? So I can just move these around, and you can see that it's Jumpgate Design, that's the group. Episode 10 Jumpgate, that is the name of the session. If I hit free text, I can go in there and double click that and type in Lee's stereo rough mix or whatever I want to do. I can do that if I needed. The channel number itself is to do with where it sits on the tracks. The channel type is showing us what the output is. It's not the type here. It's not the bus that it's being outputted to, right, per se. That's that which I want, right? I want that to be there. I mean, if it was final mix or mix, I could have put that in on free text. Excuse me. So that's going to be the file name when I export it. Okay, what's the type going to be? I don't have a preset set. I can set those, of course. My file type, I generally work in WAV, right? So I've got all these different things to use. I can use WAV. I can use AIF, MXF. If we were doing a quick mix that needed to be compressed, a smaller file type, of course, you're all familiar with MP3s. I can determine, no idea if anyone would want to do 16 kilobits, but anyway, 320 is a good setting, right? For players. I mean, 128 is a good standard too. But high quality mode is going to, the algorithms are going to work. If I'm not in there, I mean, I can't choose the sample rate. So now it's basically saying, okay, we've sorted this out. I'm in high quality mode. ID3 tag is going to work for you on play machines. Right? For example, playback machines that use metadata. If I wanted to place metadata into this, the title of, let's say it was a song, I'd put the title of the song, whoever the artist is, whatever the name of the album is, and what track number, etc., right? So that's what that will do. But if I go back to AIF, WAV, I've got tons of choices for sample rate, of course, up to 384, which is nice. 24-bit, 32-bit, 32-bit float, and 64-bit. Interleaved, quite often I do mono files, but of course stereo, if the project that's what it needs, that's probably it'll sit there and you won't ever change it. So interleave is of course going to interleave that as one file with left and right channel information. Split channels is going to split that into left and right. The mono down mix is going to sum it. Left and right channels, of course, if you want left and right channels from a surround mix. Now, to the right-hand side here, we have the broadcast wave chunk. If I don't check that, I can't use this gear over here, right? So if I do that, a lot of files use metadata. I mean, sound effects use metadata for when you're searching for them. So if you want to search for this a certain way, you're probably best off with using broadcast wave chunk. Okay. Now, what will that allow you to do? Well, it allows you to put the date in, the time in, use the time code, etc., different descriptors. You may need to use a third-party application to really delve into putting a lot of metadata in there. IXML chunk is also going to put various metadata in there. Without that in there, I can't insert the tempo definition. The extensible format, I believe that's to do with speakers, right? It puts speaker information into the file itself. And the RF64 is for way back when we used to have like 4 gig file limits on certain things. Back in the, was it SD2s? That's going back. Or you can normalize to integrated loudness, which is whatever your setting is. You can work with the control room. You can set up loudness levels, everything else in there, and it can match that. You're just going to do whatever setting you want there. Cool. Dialogue gated measurement, all that good stuff. Now, we're almost there. Almost ready to export. So the effects are grayed out. The effects are grayed out now because that is for the multiple tab. We'll get to that. Now, whatever my export's going to do, what do I want that file to do after it's exported, right? Do I want it to just sit in a folder? Do I want it to go up to SoundCloud, right? Do I want it to go into a new project and sit in there? Do I want it to just create an audio track in this project? Do I want to just simply insert it into this pool of this session and don't put an audio track? Any of those right here is going to allow you to name, right, the pool folder name. Cool. Right now, I want it to actually make another project because I want to show you what it does there. Right here, I'm going to remove something and then add it back. Currently, we're going out of output. That's what it's going to be called. Okay. I'm going to bounce this or export this to locators, not cycle markers yet. The cycle marker is, it's a predetermined length that I've created before. Check out some of the earlier videos where I talk about markers. But the locators themselves, what that allows us to do is I don't have to make a marker like this. All I have to do is make a selection in Nuendo, and whatever that selection is, I can go back. Now it will export that selection, or for the sum everything for that amount of selection. Now that might be cool when we're talking about video in a little bit. But what we're going to do now is just going to be reckless and just go ahead and do a bounce, right? Let's check it out. Cross fingers, right? Here we go. Faster than real time, of course, because that's what I've asked it to do. Straight away, it's created the session. It's made the session active. So my mouse is in this session. I focused on this session. I could select that. So that's the back end of that session itself. The only thing I notice it doesn't do is create the info line, right? So that descriptor is showing me the name of that file, and it's put it on the output track because it's taken it from that part of the file. Okay. I'm going to actually close that and come back to this one. And I'm going to just show you not the selection. So I'm going to deselect that. My special key, of course, is P to either select across or unselect, right, wherever that single is. I'm going to look at the marker itself. Now I'm going to bounce and sum the mix of the entire cycle marker. Okay, so that's the audio file that I can use there. Double check. There we go. But I'm going to remove that from the queue just to be safe, right? Who knows, that might be the one before. So I'm just going to go, there we go. Tells us everything that we need to know, what it's going to be named, everything about it, 24-bit. Now, let's talk about these at the bottom. Those will be keeping the dialog box open while it's rendering. So I can actually keep this box open here. I can update display. Okay. So what that actually means is I can look at my meters. If I hit update display, what it's going to do is bounce, preferably in real time. Okay. In real time, and during that time, I can see really quick if something happened and I clipped. Okay. So if I clipped, then I'm going to go, okay, time to go and tweak some levels and re-export it. Okay. So speaking of that, as you've probably noticed in previous episodes and see right behind me now, that, we have some synths here, we have some hardware gear, and you may have some hardware attached to your project through the interfaces, right? Through the interface. And what this does not, when you use real-time export, let's say you had some MIDI tracks triggering keyboards, it's not going to trigger them anymore. It's going to send that signal out, but it's not going to come back, right? We have to use real-time export, and we have to use monitor on those inputs coming in for it to work. If you don't have monitor on there, it's not going to go out and come back and bounce, if you will, with that file. Okay. Now, if you wanted to deactivate any external MIDI inputs, you could do that right there. That is not available to you, as I said, in fast bounce, because it doesn't make sense. Right? So there we go. We're going to have real-time export. We're going to watch that meter. We've got the full video. We've got the output. And it's going to make a brand new project. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Right, so that's it's telling us now, there's the output. There is the track. Okay, that's the entire bounce. Okay, we could probably use that in a little bit. So I'm just going to keep that open, actually. And what I need to do is zip over to here. Close that meter a second. I'm going to go back here. Close that. Are we good so far? Fantastic. Okay. Right. Now. Okay. Here we go. We're going to delve in. Let's say we wanted to create stems instead of a stereo bounce of what we're doing. In other words, just to clarify, if you're not quite sure of the terminology, that each one of these, let's say, instead of it being dialogue or music and effects, let's say that these want to be exported per folder, right? In other words, my jump gate sounds, if I solo those, I may want to, I've not made it active. When it was grayed out, I was like, ooh, there's something wrong there. If I solo that, notice that's my group, right? So if I did that, oops. Right, that's just that. I want to bounce that separately. I want to bounce the activation separately. Okay. And I want to bounce this activation. Cool. So you get the point. I'm actually creating all these different folders. I'm going to bounce separately as stems. Right. Now, I already have groups down here, because what happened was, I figured this would be a bit quicker if I did it this way. This particular one here, okay, I'm running that through an effects channel and then out through a group. So that group's allowing me as a subgroup master to keep the levels good. And I could always mix them later as audio files, right? But this is now summing it. That group master is controlling that. I can process the whole thing through that. But I've done that earlier. I've done this earlier, whereas the ship engine, if you notice, You should be able to listen to that on YouTube, right? If you're listening in a stereo situation, you're going to hear that flying off exit stage left, right? So that is the group. Notice how that is automated. I'm going to talk about automation next episode, I hope. So that entire group has been automated. I didn't use a clip in that particular instance. So what I've done is I've already made it, right? So I've already made that group. And that is apparent because when I look at my multiples, I can actually collapse those. Okay, the ship engine and the wormhole are already there, right? So I need to create more. Cool. So now let's go up here. Let's start at the top. The thing is, the best thing for me to do is to create a group by selecting all of these. And I can right click. I'm going to add track. And I'm going to use group channel to selected channels. Once I do that, it's going to ask me, okay, you're going to add the track. Apart from it being named, where do you want it to go? Well, the audio output is not necessarily the group output, right? Nuendo's looking at it two ways here. Where is the physical sound going to go? And where is the group designation, right? So I'm going to call that cunningly jump gate, right? That creates RAD underneath it. To double check this, I'm going to go and open this up. I'm going to look at not the fader, but the direct routing. And there is the direct routing. I can split this up, actually. I can, if I did that, I can render this. I can mute that by just holding down Command, actually, and I could cycle through my outputs. All right, so I want to use jump gate for that. I want all of these to use jump gate because the input of that track is jump gate. Okay, so that's good. And just to prove the point, I'm going to solo that, and it solos everything else. Cool. There's the power down, right? So that's done, and you know me. I'm going to make sure that this is colored the same. There we go. That's it. Cool. My riser here and so that's jump gate activation. That's going to output currently. I don't want it to go to output because if it does, it's going to bounce out the wrong place. All right. So group channel to selected tracks. Name that activation 01. Great. I'm going to copy and paste that, right? Because guess what? I'm going to have an activation 2 that I'm going to do. There that is. Double check. Activation 1. Do that. Awesome. Fantastic. I'm going to color that as well. It's that color. Third there. Beautiful. Excellent. Using Command for that, right? And last but not least, I'm going to send this out of another group. Right click. There we go. Group channel to selected channels. And this one is paste. 02. Sweet. There we go. Double check. Sweet. It is getting the signal. There's activation 2. Everything is hunky-dory with the world. Right. There we go. It's that color. Let's see if I can match this one here. Is it that one? Yeah. Sweet. Okay. I think we're ready to export this puppy. I'm going to hit save here, because why not? And then I'm going to bring up, remember, file, export audio mixdown. All right. Now we're going to concentrate on those stems. We already have everything set up that we need, right? Technically, I'm going to remove this from the queue again because this queue contained our last queue, which is one file. Right. I'm going to do that straight away. And then I'm going to look at my group channels. Now, notice that we have a few more there, right? So if I just click on my group channels and use my effects chorus, that means my effects chorus is going to act as its own stem. Okay, that's fine. Just to show you that this could be done through an effects channel as well, I've left it there. So it's been routed through anyway with sends, and then that's now going to export just the chorus of it, right? Everything else is set up. Cool. Double check. Now, one more thing to talk about. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at effects. Notice how that now became, it was disabled before. So inserts and strip means that it can use anything that's on those no groups, anything that's on the inserts and strips of the particular tracks themselves. If it's disabled, that means it's going to render everything without the effects. It could just be the group sends of that, those tracks, or it could just be the master and everything else, right? So that's the whole enchilada. Cool, as we say. Inserts and strip. Cool, right? I kind of want that because I have an insert on that effects track, that chorus. Yes. So add to queue. There we go. I've got all of my tracks ready to rock and roll. Excellent. Start queue. Click. It's rendering those out. And because we're not going, we can't hear it, right? That's the difference. You know it's working. Awesome. So there's the entire thing, right? So if I was really neat about this, let's take a listen. Okay, so those are all sat in the session. Now let's see what I could do here. I've talked about everything up to that point. The only thing that we're kind of missing here is, well, what if you wanted to just create that session and have everything together, right? Well, that'd be kind of cool, which is getting video imported into the session, right? But I could also use import tracks at this point because I have another session that has the stereo mix of that, which is called Jump Gate Design, right? I could try that. Let me see. What I could do here is physically, I could just drag it in just for the heck of it. But what I could do, I'm just worried about not knowing where the session is, right? Import tracks from project. What was it called? No, that was the other one. It was, if I can look at date modified, right? That's probably going to be good. That one. That's this one. Maybe that one? Or jump gate elements. Let's see. Let's see what we got in that one anyway. No, it's the wrong one, isn't it? I didn't set this up earlier. So what I'm going to do is just, instead of bringing the mix in, I'll just bring the video in, right? So that's easy enough to do. So that's File, Import Tracks from Project. And that's the project that I just had. Okay. And right inside of there, where are we? There's the video capture. There it is. I can bring in the events and parts, automation. It won't be on the video anyway. I'm going to import that at absolute position. And we're going to copy it for now. Well, yes, I probably would want to. But for this sake, I'm not going to do it. Okay. Awesome. There we go. There's my video. So now I can check it. Cool. So I brought that in with import tracks, right? Now, one more thing I just need to talk about. I'm just looking up right here. Thank you for sticking around. Not quite sure. I knew that was going to happen today. Somebody asked about Dolby Atmos. I'm not really 100% familiar. It should do multi-channel, right? It's perfectly capable of doing all the other formats. So it should be exporting for Dolby Atmos as well. I'm not 100% sure on that because Dolby Atmos is not really my thing. I would hate to tell you that. Because, I haven't got any episodes on it. So, sorry for that. But anyway, cool. Right, where were we? Okay, I was going to export the video. Right, let's say I wanted to make an export of video and the bounce of it, so I could give that to somebody just to say, hey, here's what I've just been working on. This is another version of exporting, right? This is our final thing we can talk about today. So exporting the video, you'll see straight away there's no export range, right? It's in, I wouldn't say bright yellow, but it's pretty much, I'm noticing that, right? The file name is going to be after, not this particular project itself, but the main project. Okay, the file path, of course, is all up to me. It's going to be an H.264. I can add the timecode into it if I wanted to, and I can determine what physical output it's going to be. Do I want it to be a real-time output as well? What I need to do then is set a locator, right? So I will make my marker track. I'm going to call that... actually, video or rough mix, should we say, actually, because that may be handy. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to place it right at the top there. Now I'm going to select the entire thing, use that, and then my quick key, right, which was Shift-C. So that now makes a selection and now makes a marker based upon that. So if I go to File, sorry, I'm looking around my camera, Export Video. So now the project and video frame rate don't match. What was it before? Is it 60? Is it? I can't even see, actually. Need my glasses on. 23976. So it tells me that. So my Shift S is my project. Get frame rate from video. There we go. Cool. I'm making a 30 video of 30 frame rate bounce. 30 frames per second bounce. Here we go. Export video. There it is. There's no yellows, no warning signs. It's going to tell us what that is. I can now click on export to export that video. And that will now have an MP4 of that video. with everything summed together, right? If I needed a part of that, let's say I wanted to just export the last. Let me make things bigger here so I can actually do this. Let's say, for example, I just wanted to export that partial. Now, this could be an hour and a half production. This could be a 45-minute production, whatever it may be. And you just want to send a scene to somebody, or you just want to send a clip out of it. Same thing. I will just need some kind of a marker there. What I'm going to do is place that there. That is selected. I'm going to go in the, oops, wrong one quick keyly. And I'm going to export and go to video, and that range is right there. My export range is that. So I can just quickly export that segment. Okay, wonderful. Right, so I'm going to go back here. I'm going to make sure this is on here. I'm going to close that. I'm just going to briefly look up here. Alexander, you can't. It's how do you choose audio bitrate and audio codec in video export window? That, unfortunately, I haven't seen that. That might be something that would be nice, right? That might be something that would be nice to do. That is not an option currently. So it's going to choose it's going to take the resolution of the existing video. It's not going to change anything. So whatever that was encoded as, it's going to stick to that. Does that make sense at least? Right now, that happens to be that, and it just chooses that it wants to be 16-bit and 192, right? Which is your default codec for AAC. It uses an AAC codec to do that because it's an MP4, right? Time stretch the video with the audio file just like Ableton, wouldn't it? Okay, excellent. So, with that in mind, I don't see any more questions popping up, and I've got to over 45 minutes today. I've done pretty well so far, I think, and I've talked about what I need to do. Cool. So, without further ado, I want to thank you for joining me today, and hopefully I'll see you next time in about a month's time on episode 11. Awesome. Have a great time, and I'll see you soon.